As I was saying, burnout begins with a script. It was the fall of 2021. The world was still living under the mercy of a virus. My wife and I went on a quick getaway to Istanbul. I remember us walking alongside the Bosphorus River. We were going to get some dinner, but we never made it. As I was walking on the busy sidewalk, I stopped in my tracks. My eyes went wide, and it felt like I couldn't breathe. My wife turned to look at me, and her face said it all. That was my most violent panic attack to date. Nothing had happened during the walk, no trigger, no warning. Just my body finally saying, enough. But enough about me. Let me ask you a question. When was the last time someone asked how you were doing? And what did you say? I'm fine. Doing great. We all say things like that, even when we are running on empty. I've been working with leaders across industries and cultures for the past 20 years. And I can tell you this, whatever you may think you know about burnout is probably wrong. You see, most people believe that working too hard leads to burnout. So they end up giving the usual solutions a try. Better boundaries, more vacation days, maybe a yoga retreat in Bali. None of it sticks. You can sleep for 12 hours and still wake up feeling depleted the next day. Or you can travel around the world for a full year and still feel empty on the inside. This is because burnout is caused by putting on an act, performing in the theatrical sense of the term, in order to meet expectations, earn approval, or stay in control. After lots of research and after my own experience with chronic burnout, I identified 3 sorts of scripts that come from this performative aspect. And I'll tell you more about them in a minute. But first, let me tell you why I call them survival scripts. They're like subconscious behavioral prompts, written early in life, activated whenever things get hard. Those scripts were written to protect you, and for a long time they do, so that you live a life free of pain. And today, I'm going to talk to you about the most dangerous one of all. You can think of it as the final boss of survival scripts. I call it the control script. It whispers in your ears a chilling 3-word prompt. Don't fall apart. That script is very, very powerful. And I remember exactly when it got activated for me the first time. I was 10 years old, and I was sitting in the front seat of my father's car. My father used to drive a burgundy red Toyota Cressida. We were driving to an empty car parking lot for me to experiment with my new remote control toy car. Out of nowhere, another car cut us off. So naturally, like all fathers do, my father got into a shouting match with the other driver. The shouting turned into fighting. When he got back into the car, his eyes were bloodshot, and his knuckles turned white on the steering wheel. And I sat there, staring at my toy car, examining every detail of it in silence. Don't fall apart. Even though I was only 10 years old, I somehow knew that falling apart was not an option. That script stayed with me for 25 years. And on August 4th, 2020, it took over my life. I remember that day very well. I was sitting on the dining room table, wrapping up my last video call of the day. My wife was sitting on the sofa, feet up, 8 months pregnant. We were weeks away from welcoming our first son. After hearing some unusual sounds coming from outside, we look out the window and noticed fireworks coming from the nearby Beirut port, except it was still daytime, and there was a lot of smoke. We looked into each other's eyes and instantly realized that something terrible had gone wrong. So we rushed to the corridor, dropped to the floor, just like our parents taught us. They survived the Lebanese civil war. And then the blast hit. One of the largest non-nuclear explosions in history, only 1 kilometer away from our home. It was a miracle we didn't die or even get injured. Still dazed by the explosion, we pick up our phones, go grab our passports, another wartime reflex, and rush down the stairs. People were screaming, blood mixed with dust. We reached our car, and it looked like chewed metallic gum. The roof had caved inwards, and every single window was blown into pieces. And the next thing I do, I pick up the folded windscreen sunshade of my car and start sweeping the broken pieces of glass off the front seats. I describe this moment in my book as a satisfying moment of productivity during the apocalypse. I was telling myself that I was keeping ourselves safe from injury. You know, who needs a glass cut at that moment in time? But I wasn't. I was following a script. So we end up driving to my in-laws, rush up the stairs, and finally, my wife is in good hands again. Seeing her safe made me do something that I thought was impossible at the time. I started sobbing uncontrollably. So my father-in-law, a stoic gentleman who is not the hugging type, walked towards me and held me tight. It was my turn to feel safe again. I didn't know it then, but it was moments like these that helped me survive what was about to come next. Because 6 days after surviving the Beirut port explosion, my father died alone in the hospital. And a few weeks later, our first son passed away 6 days after his birth. I know, that's a lot. But I'm not here for you to get caught up in my story. I'm here to tell you what happened next. For 15 months after surviving these 9 weeks of sorrow, I gave the impression to the world that I was fine. For 15 months after losing my home, my father, and my first son, the control script was blasting at full volume. Don't fall apart. 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 Except during that afternoon walk in Istanbul, my body did fall apart. And I later learned that breakthroughs can only happen after breakdowns. That panic attack in Istanbul was a moment of collapse of body and of identity. It was only after going through the hard work of healing that I asked myself the most important question, one I had been avoiding for years. What scripts have been running my life? And I want to ask you the same. What scripts have been running your life right now, up to this day? How long have they been running your life? How long have you been putting on a performance for a version of yourself that you no longer feel is real? And how much energy are you spending keeping up that act? Because survival scripts, they're sneaky. They were written far too early for us to be aware of them. And they get activated the first time we learn that falling apart was not an option. Maybe in a car next to a parent. Maybe in a classroom where you are being bullied. Maybe in a family setting where being the strong one was the only way to survive. No wonder most people are feeling exhausted. They're putting on an act. And the longer they do, the more spectacular the collapse. But there is hope. Once you start recognizing those survival scripts, there's usually a clear sequence of events. First, there's the of course moment, finally realizing something that was so obvious. Then there's this quiet, burning desire to make up for lost time. Except here's the thing, you never lost any time. You're exactly where you're supposed to be in your story. Now, if you're serious about experiencing breakthrough anytime soon, it won't happen unless you have the courage to fall apart. Because only then would you be able to start rewriting your scripts. On the other side of your survival scripts is you, the version of you that you don't perform, the version that you might have forgotten about. That unscripted version of you was never lost. It's just waiting for its cue to take center stage. And trust me, you don't have to go through a Beirut port explosion to experience a breakthrough. All you have to do is have the courage to drop the act. Let me close by saying this. Every survival script you follow was written at a moment in time when you needed it the most. Honor that. And then ask yourself, what is it costing me to keep following that script up to this day? Because the moment you stop following those scripts and the moment you drop the act, the world will get to meet the real you. So I'm going to close by saying this. Stop following the scripts and start writing your own. Because you are a force, and you know it. Thank you.